Happy Monday, beautiful people. Mom Shalom. All right, y'all. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It is June the 13th, 2022. Day 132 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, another 4-year consecutive day count. Day 1150. Today, we'll probably only read the Oahspe today, starting on page 211 because I got to get out of here and get to the office early today. So, we can go ahead and get started. Levon, blessings. All right, y'all. Feel a little bit better today. A little more better today than I did yesterday. I probably slept for the first night without my nose being stuffed the whole night. Well, okay. So my nose wasn't stuffed the whole night, but breathing out like one side of your nose. If you ever have a real bad stuffiness problem, first of all, the mucous membranes are inflamed, right? Which means that you didn't try to blow your nose way too much. Anytime you blow your nose, well, most of the time you blow your nose, it's going to get inflamed, and then it's going to cause this stuffiness just to linger for only God knows how long. Oh my gosh. And especially when it's late at night, it seems to get the worst. So you got to get the temperature in the room just right, whether you open up the window or the air. If it's too muggy, it's just the worst. But anyway, said all that to say it's a trick to it. Your body is smart. So if both your nostrils are stuffy, just lay down anyway. Get comfortable. Close your mouth. I know people try to mouth breathe. If it's really uncomfortable, then by golly, open your mouth and breathe. But what will happen is when your mouth is closed, and I'm not saying trying to force air through your nostrils, but just try to breathe as natural as possible while both nostrils are stuffed. And within, I'd say, 3 minutes, possible. I know it seemed like as long as we can't breathe clearly. I say the max of 3 minutes. If you just lay there, calm yourself down. I had to teach my kids, otherwise they whine, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I'm like, listen, first of all, you're making it worse. All you got to do is just lay there, get comfortable, quit wigging out, right? I know we're adults, but I got to do this with my kids. But if you lay there and just keep your mouth closed, one of your nostrils will automatically pop open to give you relief. That's a trick to the stuffy nose. Y'all may know that, but just in case you didn't, and your kids be having stuffy noses and they just do the most and you don't have anything to help them get unstuffed, tell them to calm down, lay down, get comfortable, close your mouth. Try to breathe anyway, right? And one of your nostrils will pop open. Tested, proven time and time again. All right, let's start. Hold on. But yeah, works like a champ. And then they find my kids finally just fall off to sleep. It's like, oh, it do work. I can breathe throughout this one now. I'm like, yeah, just if you calm down, you better make a little bit of progress. Okay, y'all. Father, we thank you for another day just to be here and act silly. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, y'all. Chapter 27. Wait, what's my time? First of all, like really, we're gonna have to be going by like 25 minutes. So I gotta really keep watch. Okay, 7:25. Chapter 27, top of page 211. When they were called to labor, Fragapati said, for the convenience of my own host, the light shall now be raised 2 degrees, in which case it will be well to permit the host of Hapaka to retire to the fields of Hukera in Horashi, where Athava hath already a place and teachers for them. Accordingly, the conductors now remove Hapata's host, save about 1 million who resolved to endure the light. The Essenars chanted whilst these arrangements were being carried out, and when they were accomplished, the music ceased. The chief marshal said, Swift messengers who are waiting without salute Jehovah's throne and his God and pray in order. Let me read it again. The chief marshal said, "Swift messengers who are waiting without salute Jehovah's throne and his God, and they pray in audience." Fragapati said, "Whence come they, and what is the nature of their business?" The marshal said, "From the Asuan fields of House. Their business is of the Oahspe knots, Knots, Oahspe knots." Fragapati said, "On the sign of Emuts, admit them, greeting, on the sign of Emuts, admit them, greeting from God in the Father's name." The marshal withdrew for a short while and then returned, bringing in 1,000 swift messengers, of whom Arinu was goddess. She advanced near the throne to the left. Fragapati said, "Goddess Arinu, greeting to thee in Jehovah's name. Proceed thou." Arinu said, maybe Aruni. Yeah, I think it's Aruni. I'm saying new. Aruni, okay. Aruni said, "Greeting and love to the Father, Fragapati, and to all thy hosts. I hasten hither from the fields of Houts, section 12, on the one-time plateau and place of Horrid, where are 1,000,000,000 in not since many days. This I reported to the Lord God of Japheth, Ahoan, whose forces are all employed, and he sent me hither." Fragapati said, "It is well, thou art at liberty. Hoab, canst thou untie the knot?" Hoab said, "I have faith to try." To which Fragapati replied, "Athavra will go with thee, but do thou the labor. Choose therefore thy hosts from my Etherians, and have a vessel made sufficient, so that if thou findest it advisable to bring them away, thou canst do so. Retire then with the captain of the files and make thy selections, and in the meantime give commands for the vessel to be made and put in readiness for thee." Hoab said, "With Jehovah's help I will deliver him." And he saluted, and with the captain of the files he withdrew and made his selections, choosing 5,000,000 in all, of whom half were physicians and nurses. In the meantime, he had the proper workmen build a vessel of sufficient capacity and strength as commanded by Fragapati. And in 7 days' time, everything was completed. And Hoab commanded his host to enter the ship, and he and Athara went in also. And presently they were off, being conducted by the goddess Aruni in her arrow ship to the place of the knot. Chapter 28. The goddess Aruni slackened the speed of her arrow ship to suit that of Hoab's vessel. So onward together they sped in a direct line, propelled as a rocket is propelled by constant emissions from the hulk, the which expenditure is manufactured by the crew and commanders skilled in welding Jehovah's elements. For as mortals find means to traverse the ocean and to raise a balloon, so do the gods and spirits build and propel mightier vessels through the firmament, betwixt the stars, and over and under and beyond the sun. And when the Etherians, highest rays in the most subtle spheres, send their ships coursing downward in the denser strata of a corporal world, their ready workmen take in ballast and turn the fans and reverse the whirling screws to match the space and course of travel, for which purpose men learn to trade, having rank and grade according to proficiency. Many of them serving 1,000 years apprenticeship, becoming so skilled in welding the elements and in the knowledge of the degrees of density that thousands of millions of miles of roadways in heavens are as well learned are as a well learned book to them. And conversing thus conversing with Jehovah's wide domains, they are eagerly sought after, especially in emergent cases or on journeys of millions of years, for so well they know the requirements, the places of delight, the dangers of vortices, and the eddies and whirlpools. And when a god saith, take me hither or yonder, they know the nearest way and the power required. For as Jehovah hath made icebergs on the corporal oceans, dangerous to ships, and heavy currents of trade winds, and currents in the oceans, so are there in the Etherian firmament currents and densities which the well skilled God can take advantage of, be it a slow trip of pleasure or a swift one on urgent business to suffering angels or mortals. And be it god or goddess dispatched by a higher council to a distant place suddenly, he or she must be already acquainted with navigators sufficiently to know whom to choose, and likewise understand the matter well enough to lend a helping hand if required. For oft the navigators have not swift messengers to pilot them, and yet a short journey of 50,000 miles may require as much skill as a million, especially in descending to a corporal world. Joab knew, and he managed well, following close on the arrow's trail till they neared the ruined plateau, and then, amidst the broken currents, Irene dropped along Irene dropped alongside, perceiving Joab's less wieldly vessel, and made fast. She said to Joab, behold, we are near the place. Then Joab asked, how foundest thou a knot in such a wasted country? Irene answered him, when Jehovah created woman, he gave her two tree. Hold on, I'm getting tongue tied. I gotta read this straight. I'm a woman. Hold on. When Jehovah created woman, he gave her two chief attributes, curiosity and solitude for others. So, passing here, surveying the place where the first heavenly kingdom was, I remember it had been said that Oth left some island places where once a colony in heaven had been built, and I examined it. A moan and terrible sound greeted me. I heard the Oahspe knots as I had oft heard others as I oft heard others before. We landed and made fast, and presently went about searching, led by the sad, sad noise. Then we came to the great mound, the knots, 1,000,000,000 Druhas bound in a heap, wailing, muffled, moaning as if all the heap of them were in the throes of death, but could not die. You know what? This reminds me of something I read. Oh, they call it the knot. If you read Audrey Shalom, Francis Shalom, Robert Betwabu, did I say hi to Levon when she came in? Trina, hey girl, hey Tiffany, hey girl, hey Levon, blessings. Look, if you read the book by Robert Monroe, and I think you can also find it in his first book. It's the 3-book trilogy. I've been posting ever since we've been reading My Big Toe in the description of YouTube and in Facebook, all the way down at the bottom. No, I don't. I'm sorry. I stopped putting it, but I did still put like the wave meditation. I keep posting that every day for those that are interested. But on the book list, go to the book list that I posted last week, and the 3 books, and I'll repost it today. The 3 books by Robert Monroe when he was doing the journeys of outer body, when he was having the outer body experiences. He would come across these things called knots, and now that I read through that and listened to some of the ways how he described different things in the spiritual realm, when I come across it and hear and they explain it in a different way, I immediately know exactly what they're talking about, right? Because I've now, this is like my second time hearing like the different things. Okay, so this knot, so like you tie a rope in a knot or a shoestring in a knot, a knot. They call it a knot in Robert Monroe's book, and the knots that he ran across, there was a few of them he talked about, but they were like sexual knots, so to speak. All the spirits were there. You could tell that if you're familiar with this and you read Robert Monroe's books, you could tell who are the Druhas, right? and the fetals and all that stuff, because he explained different ones. But anyway, those who pass from here, who are what's the word? I guess you could say sexual deviants, or those who like their only waking thought in life is to have sex and nothing. If they're like driven by sex, when they pass into the afterlife, and it was actually, it's a really, he gives a really good description of somebody who had passed having a heart attack while having sex with a woman. It was actually supposed to be, I think, if I remember correctly, it was supposed to be a threesome, him and his friend, and this one woman that they had been trying to get. But anyway, when he passed away while he was having sex. And so when he passed away, just like spirits that are born in chaos, when if they're fighting, they die in the midst of a war, and they wake up and they still trying to fight, but they don't realize they dead yet. Same thing that happened with people that have a heart attacks while they're having sex. And he described them. He said, and apparently, I know you were like a spirit or whatever, but I guess, I don't know, I ain't been there yet. But I never really see my body when I'm having out of body experiences. I'm just observing things around. I don't know if they were clothed or not, but he said when he saw the guy, he didn't have on any clothes. Now, some guys who die on the battlefield or whatever, they are clothed, but those who die having sex, they're like butt naked. So it was funny. He said when he came across him, um, he it looked like the guy could still see the scene of the two that was still engaging in it but hadn't died yet, but he was still trying to engage but kept just kind of going through the woman's body. It was hilarious when I was reading it. He was he was fully ready to go, like, men, they, standing straight up. It was funny the way he was describing it, and he started getting frustrated because he couldn't touch the woman when he was trying to grab her and penetrate her and everything. Then he was like, man, what is going on here? I done lost my touch or something, and so Robert, he just stand there observing it. And then the guy, because Robert was in an out of body state, the guy who was trying to get it on saw Robert, and he would ask him what's happening. He just kind of told him, he's like, I think you're dead, but impossible, I can't be. You know how long I've been waiting to get a piece of this action? But he used other words. I was hollering. If y'all have not read them books, y'all gotta read them. If you don't have the time to read them, you gotta download them on Audible. They're so good. But it gives you a different insight into the spiritual realm, which some of the stuff that I read through here seems to be lining up with like what he saw. I'm like, dude really saw something real, and based on my personal experiences with out of body experiences, I know some of the stuff like, y'all is telling the truth because I experienced that. But anyway, I said that to say the knot, right? So she came upon a knot, but when in his book, the sexual knots, he said it was people who died in that state. They were drawn, and he said it was like a massive ball of just sexual activity. And those who died in that state, it's like whatever state you are when you pass away, when you get into the next realm just above earth in the afterlife, you are driven to where that action is happening the most. Shayla, hey girl, hey. So if you die in that state, this guy was driven to this sexual ball, this sexual knot, where he said it looked like millions of spirits just like in the ball, all this action and stuff that was happening. But he was trying to help guide him like away from that, because if you read the book, it seemed like Robert Monroe, when he was having the out of body experiences as he was being taught, he had like a, for lack of a better word, guide, someone who was teaching him what he was seeing as he was passing through, and they explained that ball, that sexual ball. So by the time he had came upon this guy, he already knew what that massive ball of activity was, because he said that the feelings were so strong that if you're drawn to it, it's almost impossible, it seems, to get out of it. So even him, when he had first learned about it, he was feeling drawn to it, because it's like, when you start having out of body experiences and stuff, you have a lot of people who, it's weird, but I found this to be true. Not that I engage in it, but some people actually have out of body experiences, to have sex with other people, right? That's like a real thing. You ever hear people talk about ghost booty and stuff like that? That's what they're talking about. It is weird, but it's really a thing that can happen. Luca Brasi, shalom. So if people die a violent death, they cross over to a violent place. Now, I have not crossed over, right? But based on what I understand as of today and reading through here, the lower realms, there are different forms of activity that are happening all over, right? And the first realm that you pass through is the one that's closest to the earth, where it's a lot of what church will call demonic activity and all this type of stuff going on. And this book calls those spirits, when you die a violent death, you are born as a spirit. Your spirit is born into chaos. And so if you die fighting, your spirit, before you realize you're dead, you're going to be fighting. He even talked about that because he came across a couple war zones and stuff, and different wars that people were having. If they died fighting, they woke up in the spirit, or when they realized, or they didn't realize they were dead, they were still fighting like they were still alive in the flesh, and they kept on doing that for a bit of time till they realized that they were running through the person and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not necessarily a violent place. It's just the spirits that are on that realm. If they die in chaos, they continue to be chaotic until they pass on. They kind of like have to keep going. But if they don't, they just kind of linger around. And those are the spirits um that we call, at least the church call, like demon spirits. They're not like these little entities and stuff like some of the drawings you'll see. No, they're actually human beings who have passed from life to death, or passed into the other realm, that are there. They're all humans. They've all been humans at one time, and they're just lingering around on that first heaven, the lowest heaven closest to earth, right? And if you read through here, I'm not sure how long you've been with us, Luca Brasi, but it gives a really good definition towards the beginning of the book of when you pass, and the different ways you die if you're born as a spirit of chaos, right? Because just like you grow in school and progress in grades, the same thing is supposed to happen when you pass from here. This is just a level of education here in life. So, but yeah, so yeah, you can kind of say a violent place. Not necessarily, it's just your spirit is violent, and you have to be purged and healed of all those things so you can continue growing. I hope that makes sense. But okay. Oh, 7:44. Let me finish reading this chapter, y'all, because hold on. Oh, yeah, we're gonna stop after I finish this chapter. Oh, I might have to pause. Okay. All right. But anyway, I got on that talking about the knot. Let me start this verse over. Verse 9. We landed and made fast, and presently went about searching, led by the sad, sad noise. Then we came to the great mound, the knot, 1,000,000,000 druhas bound in a heap, wailing, muffled, moaning as if all a heap of them were in the throes of death but could not die. Being myself powerless, excuse me, being myself powerless to overcome such fearful odds, I took the bearing of the regions where I should find the nearest God, and so having measured the knot, I set sail as thou hast heard. Joab said, Every day I behold thy wisdom, O Jehovah. In a new light, thy wondrous judgment riseth up before me. But who but thee, O Father, had seen the fruitage of curiosity made perfect in thy daughters, from the little bud seen in mortal form to the overscanning of thy heavens by such goddesses. As thus Joab discoursed, they arrived at a suitable landing place where they made their vessels fast and then hurried to the knot. Without much ado, Joab walled the knot around with low fire, leaving a gateway to the east, where he placed 1,000 sentinels. 1,000,000 of this army he stationed outside of and beyond the walls, and these were divided into groups of selectors guardmen, physicians, nurses, and bearers, and manufacturers of fire and water. The selectors were provided with rods of fire and water and blinds. And after and, it has reference number 26, and it says rods of fire and water, and the guardsmen with shields and blinds. Rabban Salama. Verse 13. Then Joab stationed another million betwixt the knot and the gateway, and these were stationed in 4 rows, each 2 rows facing, but 2 paces apart, so that betwixt the rows it was like a walled alleyway. And the other 3 million Joab caused to surround the knot on every side. Each and every one of these was provided with a fire lamp, which they held in the right hand. And when all things were thus in readiness, Joab commanded the attack to begin, and at once the attackers thrust their fire lamps in the face of the Drew. Hold on. And at once the attackers thrust their fire lamps in the face of the Druze nearest by, and seizing them with the other hand, pulled them away. The Druhas do not at all relinquish their grip in the knot at the sight of the lamp, but often require to be nearly burned and stifled with the light before they release their hold. Neither cometh this grip of evil, but of fear. This definitely sounds like that thing Robert Monroe was describing, y'all. Oh, this definitely sounds like that. This is interesting. I wonder if he never mentioned this, but I wonder if he ever read this, even knew about this book when he wrote his trilogy. Okay. The knot is nothing more or less than a mass of millions and millions of spirits becoming panic stricken and falling upon their chief or leader, who becometh powerless in their grip and is quickly rolled up in the midst of the knot. And when the deliverers thus begin And when the deliverers thus began at the exterior of the knot, peeling off the crazed and moaning spirits, they hurl them backward, where they are caught by the second, who in turn hurl them into the alleyways, where they are again thrust forward till past the gate and the wall of fire. From the time, therefore, that the Druhas receiveth the thrust of the fire lamp in his face, he is not suffered to linger, but is whirled suddenly from one to another so quickly, so quickly he cannot fasten to any person or thing. For were they to fasten on even the deliverers, first one, then another. Oh, okay. For were they to fasten on even the deliverers, first one and then another, soon a second knot would result, because of which to untie a knot of 1,000,000,000 crazed angels is not only a dangerous proceeding, but a feat of unusual grandeur to be undertaken by 5,000,000 Etherians. To provide against accident, Joab appointed a Thavra to take charge of the delivered after they were beyond the walls, for a Thavra had been long practiced in such matters thousands of years. So a Thavra divided and arranged the Druhas into groups, placing guardians with arranged. Hold on. So a Thavra divided and arranged the Druhas into groups, placing guardians with fire rods over them, and in some cases, taking the groups away and walling them around with fire also. Now, by the time 5,000,000 of the knot were released, some of the external delivered groups began to tie themselves in knots. And when Athavra saw this, he said unto Joab, Behold, they are becoming too numerous for my host. I have not sufficient guardsmen. Joab said, Then will I cease a while, and instead of delivering, come and assist thee. Accordingly, Joab suspended the battle for a time, and together they labored with those without, untying the small knots and arranging them in safer ways, placing a greater number of guards over them. This done, the Isinars struck up lively music, starting dancings and marchings, for such is the routine of the restoring process practiced by the gods. Then come the nurses with cheerful words, with mirth and gaiety, following one diversion with another in rapid succession. But to the raving maniacs, and to the stupid, and to the helpless blind, the physicians now turn their attention. So we definitely can see how they use music a great deal in helping to restore, even in their processions and everything, but definitely in the restoring of those who have taken on darker spirits by the time that they've passed into into the spiritual realm, what we call, right, after you've passed away. Again, Joab and his army fell upon the knot, pulling the external ones away and hurling them out, but not so rapidly, having fewer deliverers, for he had bequeathed an extra million to Athavra outside the walls, and after another 300 million were delivered. Joab ceased and joined with Athavra to assist and divide and group them in the same way. And he bequeathed another million of his army to Athavra, and then again resumed the attack on the knot, and thus continued till he reached the core of the knot, having untied the whole 1,000,000,000 Druhas, gradually lessening his own army and enlarging that of Athavra. And when Joab came to the core of the knot, behold, he found Obi, the false god, who falsely styled himself Thor, the Etherian. I was waiting to see who was going to find at the middle of this knot. Bruh, you see what you done did? And when Joab came to the core of the knot, behold, he found Obi, the false god who falsely styled himself Thor, the Etherian. And in the midst of the knot, they had jewels of rare value, and stolen crowns, and stolen symbols, and rods, and holy water, and urns, and incense, and a broken wheel of Jehovah, a broken triangle of the gods, and, in fact, a sufficiency of things whereof one might write a book in the description. Suffice it, a false god in his kingdom had collapsed, and he fell, crushed in the glory of his throne. And there were with him 7 false lords, who were also crushed in the terrible fall. Obi and his lords, from their confinement in the knot, were also crazed with wild, and I'm sorry, Obi and his lords, from their confinement in the knot, were also crazed and wild with fear, screaming and crying with all their strength, even as were all the others, like drunkards, long debauched, delirious, and fearful of imaginary horrors which have no existence, or as one's hand long compressed becometh numb, so that when the pressure is taken away, it still seemeth not free. So would not Obi nor his lords believe they were free, but still cried, calling for help. At this time there came from Ahoan, god of Japheth, a messenger with 40 companions and with 500 apprentices, and the messenger's name was Turbi, an atmospherian, 300 years, grade 2. Greeting from Ohoan in Jehovah's name. Turbi said, to whom shall I speak? To whose honor this deliverance credit, save Jehovah's? Athara said, to Joab, as a red Hoyan disciple of Fragapati, who was sojourning in Monroe, capital of Oahspe. And Athavra further asked Turbi his name, whence he came, and especially if he knew about this knot before, and the history of its cause. To which Turbi replied, from Ahoan this I have learned. Some 400 years ago, one of the sub-gods named Obi, because of his modesty and bird-like fleetness, was promoted by Samati, who is now commissioned master of the Ehuans by Fragapati. And after Samati, it has reference letter K, which you can find on page 236. And it says, Samati here referred to is the Ihua Mazda with Zarathustra. He had been an atmospherian god for 400 years and chief god for 200 years. This is the origin of ibis worship, 1882 edition. Ibis, you know, the bird head ibis that we see in Egyptology. Okay. This, whom Joab hath delivered, is Obi, the one time faithful sub god of honorable purposes. His kingdom prospered for 200 years, and his name and fame spread throughout all these heavens, and even down to mortals who were inspired by his who were inspired by his admiring spirits to make its images of birds, Obi or ibis, and dedicate them to Obi. He became vain of the flattery and, losing faith in Jehovah, finally came out in unbelief, saying there was no all highest, save each and every God chose to exalt himself. Within his dominions, which numbered nearly 1,000,000,000 angels, were a score or more of the lords under him, to the wisest of whom he began to preach his views, looking to personal laudation and glory. All right, y'all, we almost done. I gotta hurry up. I really gotta hurry up. In the course of a score of years, the matter culminated in Obi and a few of his favorite lords proclaiming a new kingdom styled the All Highest Kingdom in the All Highest Heaven. And the title he assumed was Thor, the only begotten Son of all light. Thor, the all light personated. Thor, the personal son of me, the virgin universe. Thus Obi cut loose from the true God and his kingdoms, and he immediately walled his kingdom around with a standing army, promoting 7 of his most efficient admirers as lords and others as generals and captains. And at once he set about enlarging and enriching his throne and his capital, which he called Oahspe and known as Hout on the true charts. In the course of 100 years, his kingdom became a place of 2,000,000,000 souls. His chief city, Oahspe, was the richest and most gaudy city that had ever been in these heavens. The streets were paved with precious stones, the palaces for himself, his lords, and his marshals and generals were built of the most costly jewels, with pillars, arches, and chambers of the most elaborate workmanship and of the most costly material. Obi became a tyrant, and, save his lords and few favored friends, none were permitted to approach his throne but by crawling on their bellies and even under guard. Nor were they permitted to raise their eyes upon him, save at a very great distance. And all his subjects were his slaves. In fact, through under, I'm sorry, and all his subjects were his slaves. In fact, though under progressive discipline, these slaves were sent far away into atmosphere or else down to the earth to gather tribute for the glory of Thor or Obi and his favorites. Nor did these slaves mistrust, but they were working for Jehovah, believing that he lived in the capital, Oahspe. At first, Thor educated and otherwise improved his slaves, but finding them less obedient in consequence of knowledge, he finally destroyed all the heavenly schools and colleges and resolved to keep his subjects forever ignorant. Consequently, the wiser ones deserted him, save his officers, and his angels were without knowledge, knowing nothing, save that they had to work for Thor forever. In addition to ignorance, Thor kept his subjects forever in fear of himself, forever threatening them with terrible punishments if they ceased to pray to him as the only personified all like Jehovah. I'm going to just pause right there for my Bible readers. In addition to ignorance, Thor kept his subjects forever in fear of himself, forever threatening them with terrible punishments if they ceased to pray to him as the only personified all like Jehovah. And in the course of time, his people forgot all aspiration for any other heaven or any other God. Many of these were deputized to dwell with mortals as guardian spirits, persuading mortals to worship Thor and Ibis, threatening them with being turned into serpents and toads after death if they obeyed not these injunctions. Thus ruled Thor the False for 400 years in Oahspe. Neither was it possible for a Samati to send an army of sufficient strength to overcome such a kingdom. But a change finally came. A light descended from the higher heavens 6 generations ago, and according to the legends of old, it was ominous that the gods of higher worlds would intercede. So Samati, taking advantage of this, sent emissaries to Thor, otherwise Obi, and solicited him to give over his evil ways and reestablish Jehovah. Thor the False sent back word saying, "When I was a child, I was taught to fear Jehovah and I feared him. After long experience, I have discovered there is nothing to fear in all the worlds. If there be any Jehovah, he is without form or person or sense. I fear him not. I revere him not. My heaven is good enough for me and my lords. As for my subjects, let no man nor God nor Lord meddle with them. Samati, who is the lawful God of all these heavens and of the earth, thus perceived no way to reach Thor's slaves, for the slaves were too ignorant to desire anybody or anything save Thor. Nevertheless, he sent word the second time to Thor, this time saying, "Thy kingdom is even now destitute of intelligent people sufficient to protect thee in case of panic. If a comet or a sudden light or the passage of an avalanche through thy dominions should take place, thou wouldest surely find thyself overthrown in a knot. Thy subjects look upon thee as the all highest, they will surely rush upon thee." Thor sent the messengers back with an insulting answer. Thus the matter stood till after Ahoan's appointed. I'm sorry, hold on. Thor sent the messengers back with an insulting answer. Thus the matter stood to after Ahoan's appointment as god of Japheth and her heavens, which at once cut off Thor's emissaries to mortals and confined him within his own kingdom. At this time, Samati was commissioned to establish the word of God amongst mortals, but he communicated Thor's position to Ahoan. Ahoan sent ambassadors to Thor the False, beseeching him in the same manner to give up his personality and return with his kingdom to Jehovah, promising him the best of assistance. To this, Thor the False replied by the messengers, saying, "Ahoan, thou usurper, if thou desirest favors of me, thou shalt approach me as all gods and angels do, by crawling on thy belly before me. Encroach thou not one jot or tittle on my most high kingdom, or I will banish thee back to thy miscreant regions with stripes and curses." Ahoan was surprised, but perceived that till trouble came upon Obi, nothing could be done for him. So the time came, Jehovah suffered him to go the full period of self glory. Thus Obi fell. Bruh, I tell you, everybody, all of them, all of the false gods and lords, they were warned before they were overthrown, right? Listen, go ahead and give up your evil ways. Stop this madness, man, because Jehovah is coming and he's going to overthrow, right? Not Jehovah himself. His voice came, right? But somebody a little bit more powerful than the false gods came with just a little bit of light and shined it on their kingdom and threw their whole kingdom into disarray. Obi was even told, they say, listen, if a little bit of light should come down through here or an avalanche or pass through your kingdom, you're going to be thrown into a knot. He mocked them. Listen, verse 39. Ahoan was surprised but perceived that till trouble came upon Obi, nothing could be done for him. Kind of like people who just they just gonna have to hit their head up against the brick wall. Just stop talking to them. They got to run the full period of self glory, right? Oof, buddy, that's a hard fall. Ahoan was surprised, but perceived that till trouble came upon Obi, nothing could be done for him. So the time came, Jehovah suffered him to go the full period of self glory. Thus Obi fell. Turby ceased, and Athava said, O Jehovah, when will man cease to fall? Thou hast proclaimed thyself in all places, high and low. Thy gods and lords and countless angels have proclaimed thee. Thou alone art the password to all the universe. Oh, that might be our title for today. Thou art the password to all the universe. Thy name hath 1,000 exalted devices to win the souls of mortals and angels from darkness to light, and yet they turn away from thee, thou creator of suns and stars and countless ethereal worlds. And they set up themselves as an object of worship. Oh, the smallness of gods and men. Oh, the vanity of thy little children. Thou hast said to mortals, go not into the marshes, for there is fever. Build not large cities, for there is sin. Go not after lust, for there is death. But they go in headlong, and they are buried and dead. And it has, after buried, it has reference number 27, which says they are bruised. So the previous version said they are bruised and dead. This version says they are buried and dead. And these last two verses. To those who are risen in heaven, thou hast said, remember the lessons of earth, lest ye fall. Remember the fate of self conceit, lest ye be scourged. Remember the king and the queen of the earth, how they become bound in heaven, lest ye also become bound. But they will not heed. Vain self riseth up in the soul. They behold no other God but themselves, in whom they acknowledge wisdom. Oh, wow. That was good. All right, y'all, we absolutely have to pause right here. We'll pick it back up with chapter 29 tomorrow. Thank y'all for hanging out. May y'all continue to bless all of you as you go about your day. If y'all want to read ahead, go ahead. I ain't stopping. Auntie Shalom, I saw you came in earlier. I'm just now saying it. All right, y'all. Happy Monday. It is June the 13th, 2022, day 132 of year 4, reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets. Another 4-year consecutive day count, day 1150. And we read pages 211 through 217 in the book of in the Oahspe. All right, y'all. I'm going to reshare the links to the trilogy. You don't have to get it, but you can if you want to. And you can look on YouTube. I tried to share a link before. Somebody read his books, but it's not really like the clearest version. If I can find something that's free that I can share with y'all, I'll share it. But I mean, if you're looking for it, if you can get through it, by all means, if you can't afford it. But I would recommend if you really want to listen to it, you're just gonna have to download it on Audible or download it on Kindle or purchase the book and read it, right? But either way, it's good. You get as we read through if you read through that or listen to it, as we get to some of the deeper understandings in the Oahspe, it's going to explain some of that stuff. And although he does a really good explanation of what he saw when he encountered those things, he leaves all religious terms and stuff out of it. So he wanted people, religious and non-religious, to be able to read through it without taking things of the afterlife and trying to just pin it with one particular religion. And what they found out is these things, they just go across the board. They're not a part of like Christianity or Islam or all of this stuff. And that's what they found out about the unseen, the spiritual realm. When you have out of body experience, so you die, religion means nothing, right? It's across the board. This is what happens from his own personal experience. And he was a bit of a scientist, so they got charts and they recorded things, all this stuff. They got a whole university. They still doing this stuff today, right? Figuring this out without using the spiritual mumbo jumbo. That's why I like it, because we're breaking free from all the religious dogma and all just the craziness, no matter where you come from. I come from Christianity, and there was a lot of dogma I had to get rid of and purge myself from. But I think it's a really, really good resource, especially if you're growing spiritually, to help you, especially if you're growing spiritually and you have a lot of spiritual happenings happening to you, right? Like you have gifts to see and hear the spiritual realm, or you experience certain things, or you have out of body experiences a lot. That is a great resource. I cannot stress that enough. Thomas Campbell's My Big Toe, Robert Monroe, his university and his 3-book trilogy and stuff. Absolute wonderful resources for spiritual people who are growing, right? All right, it's not the all in all, but it is definitely a great resource that you should add to your bag. Put it on the table. All right, y'all. With that being said, I gotta go. Love y'all. May y'all continue to bless you all. And I will see y'all back here tomorrow morning bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.